Hello there, and welcome back to another Remnants of Naezith individual level discussion. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at what is possibly the most interesting level in terms of ILs in Jade, and that is Windup. I know you're sitting there asking yourself, what makes Windup so interesting? Isn't it just another level? And there's a very simple reason for why it's so awesome. Windup actually has two perfectly viable routes that you can take in it that have not been optimized, so we're not actually sure which one is faster. For reference, these two routes are the intended route, which is this lower route most players take on their first time through, in which we come through the spooky spike corridor and continue up through the level as normal. The second route, which is put in here intentionally, is this upper route, in which we go through this different spooky corridor of spikes and finish the level the exact same way. At the time of recording, Chesda has the world record using the upper route, and Midge has the number 2 spot using the lower route. I don't believe either of these are optimized fully, so it's hard to say which route is faster. I will say, however, that the lower route is most definitely more difficult, so if you're looking for a challenge, you can stick with the lower route part, which is what we're going to cover first, but if you're looking for an easy way to boost your dominance and improve your time on this level, then you can skip ahead to the upper route. Alright, to kick things off, we're going to be taking a look at the lower route, which is a very challenging route to complete. This is not something that beginners should attempt if you're looking for a good time in this. And one thing I will say before we start this is that this level really only has two proper ways to do it. There isn't enough leeway in the strategies to make a beginner, intermediate, and so on. It's just looking at these, going through them, seeing what the slight optimizations are in them, and going from there. So without further ado, here is the lower route. This is what it looks like at full speed, courtesy of Midge. And we'll go through it once more at half speed, just to get a good look at what's happening in it. So, let's take a closer look at this to see what's happening and what some slight optimizations that Midge does and some slight optimizations that could be applied to this route. So to start things off, at the start of this level, we are buffering our inputs as a dash jump. This will also happen for the upper route, but things will quickly diverge from there. You can see we do a rather large dash jump, and then we do a second dash jump on top of it. This is actually the same as the upper route, except for us on this route. You'll see that we drop our dash jump rather soon, because our goal here is to grapple onto this, and then release our grapple into a hook so that we can build up some sideways momentum. When we get to the upper route, we're going to see a slight difference where we're trying to go up, so it's not as important to have a longer grapple for more horizontal speed. So we get a pull in here, that is a grapple and jump, followed by a second grapple, and then Midge here jumps. The jump here is just to cancel our height. It doesn't have to be a particularly short or long jump, just something that will get us to fall down in between this area here. Of course, to optimize this, we're going to want as long of a grapple as possible. That gets us rather high up under here, but anything when you're first trying to spread out will work. Here we see Midge does a nice long grapple and barely scoots underneath this block, a little bit of headroom to spare. And our goal from here is going to be to gain some height as we continue through here. So as we continue along, you see Midge does a jump into another grapple, holding the jump for the full duration to get as much height as possible, and then proceeds to hold on to this grapple. Unfortunately with this one, I believe it's not possible to gain the height you need and still carry a grapple using a dash jump or something like that. So for this one we actually have to expend some of our horizontal speed to swing upwards to carry our momentum like so into this upper area. So as we continue along, we're getting more grapples to build up more speed, and we actually do a quick jump cancel here to cancel out our height because our next intention is to grapple somewhere up here and then get a perfect release timing to go flying up and carry our momentum over top. So you grapple here, gets a good release to dodge the spikes. This is really the toughest part, is managing your height and your release time. We hit the wall and then we do a jump cancel to start falling faster. And unfortunately we don't have multi-ghost replays, but if we did, what we would see here is the world record ghost being somewhere up here well behind where we are, and us being way further ahead here. The difference, of course, being that this ghost will have a lot more vertical momentum coming into this, and so we'll be able to finish this ending part faster. So as we continue down, we drop, and when we get to this part, there are two things to note for swings in this game. The first is, if you want a lot of speed, then you want to fall as far as you can and get as long of a grapple as you can. That will generate the most speed. If you want to complete a level quickly, however, sometimes the optimal way to perform these swings is not to get the most speed, but instead to complete it quicker with a little bit less speed. And for us, that makes sense on this level because all we have to do is go up here, and then there's a very short corridor at the end here. So having more speed will actually waste more time generating that speed than it will save by going faster in the long run. So for that reason, with this grapple, we are actually going to grapple on rather soon, so that we can scoot underneath this pillar as close to it as possible. And you see that we hold on for the full duration until the horizontal when we release, and then we do a quick left turn to set up our position. Sometimes you won't have to do this left turn. This is all personal preference, whether you turn to the left or hold a no input. Oh, that's not the thing. A no input setting to have us go flying up here. So as we continue up, you see that we start holding right, and then we grapple onto this wall, and as long as we're holding right and have enough vertical speed, this will carry us over top of the wall, at which point we can release at the vertical. And one of the cool things about this route is we actually have an extra dash charge to use at the end here, which is what makes these two routes comparable. The upper route, you'll see once we get to this part, actually has no extra dash charges here, so we can use a dash to get through this upper corridor a little bit faster, throwing in a couple of grapples for some speed, or in this case one grapple, and that will take us to the end. Now, where can we optimize this route is the question. Of course, Midge has second place time, so it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. One hypothetical place where this could be sped up, if anybody watching this is crazy enough to try this, is in this portion. It may actually be possible to grapple onto this and perform a half pipe maneuver around here and carry some speed over, which would save us from having to jump cancel up here. Unsure of whether that would be faster or not, but it's one thing to keep in mind. And then, of course, at the end here, there is some sort of optimization to be had with grappling along here to build up some more speed. So that is the lower route. Again, very challenging route. I wouldn't recommend it as your starting route. It's something to challenge yourself with. I had one PD a while back that used this route but was slower. The upper route is objectively much more easy to optimize, so we're going to hop into that right now. Alright, so we are here now looking at the upper route. As far as routing for this goes, the optimal route is actually not super challenging aside from the ending. There are a few different routes that you can do that we'll look at for the start, which are all fairly similar. Some of them are a little bit faster than others, but just to show off, the very start of this route begins with a buffered dash jump, and then at the top of that dash jump we input another dash jump. And our goal here, I have hook path indicator on for this one just so you can see here. Our goals here are A, to get a grapple onto either the upper or just below the upper part of this, the underside, like so, onto the sidewall as opposed to the bottom. And 2, to get a grapple onto this wall as soon as we release. So those are the two main objectives here. There's going to be another grapple that we want to nail at the top that is a little bit tricky to get a feel for. But as far as this grapple here goes, there are a few different ways that people do this. So we're just going to take a quick look at some of the leaderboard runs to see what I'm talking about with that. We're going to start off with -7s. You can see we do our pull here to get us close to the top. We input another grapple, that way we start swinging towards here. And then once we get up to this part, we'll see that -7 does a jump into a grapple, holding the jump so that we can get as much height as possible so that we're closer to this grapple point. And then you can see on the inputs we are actually just holding grapple, dash, and jump all together. So we jump, grapple, and then hold, dash, and jump. And for us, that will input this. As soon as our dash comes off cooldown, throws us in, we gain a bunch of height, and we can start grappling our way through this upper part. So that's one way to do it, is just by holding the 3 inputs together. If we take a look here at plastics variation, see the same thing, a pull here, and then we do a grapple as soon as the pull goes off. We do a dash into a grapple, and then this time we dash before we input our jump. So we're doing a jump, grappling onto this wall, and then we're going to input a dash. As soon as we see that dash go off, we're going to jump, and that'll give us a little bit more height. And of course, more height means that we're going to generate more speed as we're falling, so it gets us a little bit higher up on this part so that we can start grappling a little bit sooner and going a bit faster. So that's Plastic's method, and then we have Chesda's method here, which at the time of recording, of course, is the fastest, or is shown to be the fastest. So once we get through this part here, you'll see that we, instead of jumping and then grappling, we're actually grappling and then jumping. So we're trying to pull up to this part. The reason for this pull is that it gets us closer to our destination of going upwards, so it gives us more vertical speed than just a jump into a grapple would be. And the pull actually helps us get the right amount of speed that we need to make our next dash pull a little bit easier. So you see the pull starts to go off here, and then as we get closer to this, Chesda releases that pull, does just a regular old grapple onto this wall, and then does a dash into a jump. And if you're paying close attention, you'll notice that this dash jump was actually pretty close to vertical. So when we go flying up, we actually gain a ton of height here, much higher up than anybody else was. So the things to remember for this one are we do a pull grapple off of this first lower part here, and then we do a pull onto this. As we get really close to it, we do a grapple into just a regular old dash pull. So grapple, and then dash, and then jump. And that'll send us flying up, and the entire time we are still holding the right direction so that we can continue traveling as far to the right as possible. Now the reason that I have hook indicator on is actually for this part. I'm just going to move this text to the side so you can see. Our grapple is not quite long enough to reach this top part as soon as we jump out of our dash pull. So we actually have to wait a little bit before we can grapple onto here. And this is actually a grapple that I miss very frequently. I'm assuming others also miss this very frequently. It's a rather difficult grapple to get a feel for. So this is one of the ones that if you decide to do this optimal, more height route, this grapple right here will actually be a bit of a challenge to get down consistently and hit every time. If you're doing slightly less optimal strats like we saw with -7 and the rest, you'll notice that they're a little bit lower down, and so they're actually grappling onto this lower part of the wall, and that's much more lenient and forgiving. So we are grappling up onto this top wall, and I'm going to just pause it here. We actually do a second grapple just to make sure that our height is set up properly, and we're going to take a look at what we want to accomplish with this ending part. So first and foremost is we want to make sure that we are falling down and we're going to get past the little edge that comes up after this part, the same edge that we jump canceled over in the lower rep. So our first goal is to have enough speed to make it over that ledge. Our second goal is to be falling as we approach that ledge so that we have enough downward speed to give us more speed going through our swing at the end. So we want horizontal speed to make it past the ledge. We want more vertical speed so that we're going faster. So that means that one, we need to have some grapples in here so that we have enough momentum to carry us past. And we also want to jump as soon in this area as possible so that we start falling sooner. And for our purposes, that's going to be us jumping just underneath these spikes as we make it through here, so that we can jump, go a little bit up, and then start falling and get a bunch of speed going down. So you'll see for Chesda, this means that we actually hold this grapple that we're on a little bit past the horizontal so that we start flying a little bit upwards. We're able to hit this grapple here, and then we want to release with the momentum path sort of flowing up like this so that we can just jump past these spikes. So we do a little jump, just barely miss the spikes, and now we are set up perfectly, a little bit more speed if we need it, perfectly to fall past here. And then this ending is basically the same as we saw with Midge's route. We are trying to grapple as relatively close to this position as possible so that our swing takes us just underneath this, almost bonking our heads. Again, that completes our swing a little bit sooner so that we can get up to this top part faster. See the grapple, barely scoot under here, barely miss that corner, and then it's the same thing. We're going to release at the horizontal, adjust our X position, and then turn back to the side, holding right with grapple, release at the vertical, and this time we don't have any dash charges left, so this is just grapples to optimize our speed. So that is a lot of information to take in. This video is done a little bit differently than others, mostly because there are no real major differences in strats aside from just optimizing when you jump, how many grapples you do, how much speed you have. But the most important things to remember with this route are that we want more height here so that we can start grappling sooner. That top part is closer to us. And then we want to make sure that we jump as soon as possible here so that we start falling as soon as possible while still making it past this little lip right here. So our goal is jump as soon as we can so that we fall sooner and have enough speed to make it just past this lip here. Aside from that, the ending takes a lot of practice, a lot of patience. There will be a lot of times when you go around this corner, you swing up here, you turn to the left, and then you try to turn to the right and grapple, but instead you grapple onto this wall and swing there like an idiot. Happens to me all the time. But once you get this level down, it's actually a lot of fun to carry your momentum through this. So good luck with your practicing. I hope this has been at least a little bit informative, and I will see you next time when we talk about sewers. Take care.